Chapter 1, A New Beginning. I opened my eyes to a world that seemed so different yet so familiar. My body felt strange, and when I looked down, I saw tiny hands, delicate and smooth. The soft sounds of laughter filled the air, and a warm, comforting presence surrounded me. I was no longer myself, and I was no longer in the world I had once known. I had become Lysandra, the mother of a child named Valiant. The story I had read, the one that haunted my mind, now felt all too real. In the novel A Wasteland Without Blood or Tears, Valiant was destined to be the cruel ruler, known for his bloody conquest and the endless destruction he brought upon the kingdom. The very thought of it sent a shiver through me. I had always imagined what it would be like if I could change his fate, but now, standing in the shoes of Lysandra, I realized I had been given a chance to do just that. "Valiant, my precious son," I whispered as I gazed at him lying in his cradle, his little fingers clutching at the air, a quiet, innocent smile playing on his face. How could this adorable child grow into the tyrant that I had read about? I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the weight of this new responsibility. "I can't let you become the monster of the story. I won't let you hurt others. I'll protect you, no matter the cost." Chapter 2, A Mother's Love. It wasn't long before Valiant began to grow, his features changing as the days passed. His deep brown eyes, full of curiosity and wonder, never failed to captivate me. He would often reach out to touch my face, as though sensing that something in the world was different from what he had known. And though he couldn't yet understand the dangers that loomed on the horizon, I could already see the first signs of strength in him, the same traits that would eventually lead him down a dark path. I knew I had to act fast, to guide him in a way that would steer him away from his inevitable fate. I made sure he was surrounded by love, kindness, and warmth, teaching him to value human connection rather than power. But I knew I couldn't shield him from everything. There would come a time when the world would turn against him, and the darkness within would start to emerge. I was prepared for those moments. I would be there, by his side, reminding him of the importance of compassion. But I also knew that I couldn't do this alone. The people around us, the nobles, the court, the entire kingdom, they all had a role to play in shaping my son's future. I had to make them see him for who he truly was, not just a future tyrant. Chapter 3, The First Step. As Valiant grew older, I began to take him to the royal gardens, away from the politics and the scheming of the court. There, I let him run freely, his laughter echoing through the vast fields, his small hands grasping at the flowers, his face lit up with pure joy. "You are meant for more than this," I would whisper to him in moments of peace. "Don't listen to the world. You are kind, Valiant. You are capable of love." But the world, as I soon realized, would not be so kind. One day, when Valiant was just 6, an assassination attempt was made on his life. It was a quiet evening when a cloaked figure slipped into the palace grounds, intent on ending the life of the child who would one day rule all. But Valiant, despite his age, seemed to sense the danger. Without thinking, he reacted. With a speed and ferocity that shocked even me, he defeated the assassin, not with bloodshed, but with sheer willpower and precision. When the guards arrived, they found the man bound and unconscious, with no sign of harm on Valiant's small body. I ran to him, my heart pounding, holding him tightly in my arms. "You're safe, Valiant. You're safe." But in that moment, I saw it, the spark of power, of something darker beneath the surface. "Mother," he said softly, his eyes wide with innocence yet a hint of something I couldn't quite place. "I didn't want him to hurt you." I kissed his forehead, praying that I could change his path. Chapter 4, The Battle Within. As Valiant continued to grow, the weight of his destiny pressed heavily on me. I could no longer shield him from the world forever. The court, the nobles, the people, they all had their eyes on him, watching every move, waiting for the moment when the future king would finally take his place. I realized that the battle I had to fight wasn't just against the forces that sought to turn him into a monster. It was also against fate itself. And as I stood by my son's side, I knew that no matter what, I would fight to the very end to ensure that the world would never see the heart of the monster they expected him to become. Because I, Lysandra, would be the one to shape his future. And I would make sure it was a future filled with light, not darkness. The days grew longer as Valiant's powers began to manifest. It wasn't just his strength that set him apart, it was the aura that seemed to envelop him. A presence that made others take notice, but not always with warmth. I could see the glances exchanged behind my back, the whispers in the court corridors. "The prince is too different," they murmured. "He is too strong, too dangerous." I couldn't afford to ignore these warning signs. Valiant's curiosity for the world was matched only by his sharpness, a sharpness that began to unsettle even the most seasoned advisors. They spoke to me with cautious words, advising me to prepare him for the throne, to ensure he would grow into the role that awaited him. But I knew that throne could wait. My son's heart couldn't be sold to the crown of tyranny. "Mother," Valiant said one evening, looking out over the kingdom from his window. "Why do they look at me that way? Why do they seem afraid?" The question was innocent, but it pierced me with an unexpected pain. My son could sense the growing distance between him and the people of this kingdom. He didn't understand yet, but he would soon enough. The weight of royalty was always a burden, and for Valiant, the crown would be heavy with expectations to fulfill a prophecy of cruelty. But I couldn't let him believe that was the only way. "They fear what they don't understand," I said, walking to his side. "But you are more than what they see, Valiant. And I will make sure of that. I will protect you from what they want you to become." The more I shielded him from the dark forces of the court, the more I realized that my protection could only go so far. The court was a nest of serpents, constantly plotting and scheming. I'd heard rumors of a group that sought to control Valiant, to use his growing power for their own gain. The whispers spoke of a blood pact, an ancient rite that could bind Valiant's heart to the throne forever. The price for such power was steep, and it would force him to surrender his soul to the kingdom's demands. I knew I had to act before they came for him. One night, I sat alone in the royal chambers, contemplating what needed to be done. My hands trembled as I held the old amulet, a relic of my family. It was said to have the power to protect its bearer from dark influences. But I knew that using it would come with a heavy cost. The magic was ancient, and it was never meant for someone like me. I placed the amulet around Valiant's neck while he slept, whispering a prayer of protection. "I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe." The moment I clasped the amulet, a surge of power coursed through me. It was both painful and exhilarating, but I didn't hesitate. My sacrifice would be necessary, even if it meant losing a part of myself. When Valiant awoke the next morning, he smiled, his innocent face lighting up the room. He didn't know what I had done, what price I had paid to ensure his safety. But I could see it in his eyes, the purity and goodness that still resided in him. "Mother, why do you always worry so much?" he asked, tilting his head. I smiled softly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Because I love you, Valiant. And no matter what the world says, I will always fight to keep you safe." But my resolve was about to be tested in ways I hadn't anticipated. One fateful night, the court's darkest faction made their move. A faction that had long been watching Valiant's every step, waiting for the moment when he would be ripe for manipulation. They came for him. The moon hung high in the sky as I heard the distant clang of steel outside the palace walls. Valiant stirred in his sleep, and I rushed to his side, my heart pounding. "It's time, Mother," Valiant said, his voice low, his gaze distant, as though he could sense the encroaching danger. He rose from his bed, a calm determination in his eyes. "Valiant, stay behind me," I urged, fear rising within me. But he shook his head, an eerie calmness settling over him. "No, Mother. I will protect you." He had changed. The strength that he had shown before was nothing compared to what he now possessed. It was as if he had already begun to embrace the darkness that his future demanded of him. I held on to him tightly. "Please, Valiant, you don't have to do this. You are not a weapon." He turned his gaze to me, his expression unreadable. "I am whatever I must be to keep you safe, Mother." With that, he walked toward the door, and I had no choice but to follow him. The confrontation with the enemy was swift, and the royal guards fought valiantly, but it was Valiant who dominated the battlefield. He moved with such precision and power, his actions almost mechanical in their efficiency. The dark figures of the faction fell before him, their blood staining the palace floor. I watched from the shadows, my heart heavy with fear and pride. This was the boy I had vowed to protect. The boy I had raised with love. And yet, he was becoming someone else, someone I wasn't sure I could save. When the battle was over, the silence in the halls was deafening. Valiant stood in the middle of the carnage, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, his eyes empty. "Mother, what happens now?" he asked, as though he had never known a life beyond this. I walked toward him slowly, my heart aching. "Now, we take the first step together. The path you walk is yours to decide, Valiant. But you don't have to walk it alone." He met my gaze, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy he once was. The innocent child, full of wonder and warmth. But I knew that moment was fleeting. The darkness was within him now, and it would never fully let go. The real battle was only just beginning. The days that followed the battle were heavy with unspoken words and lingering tension. The kingdom was safe, for now, but the price had been steep. Valiant's power, his unyielding strength, had proven to be both a blessing and a curse. It was clear that he had begun to distance himself from the child he once was, as though he was stepping into a role he didn't fully understand yet, but felt destined to fulfill. As we sat together in the royal garden, I watched him carefully. The boy who had once been so full of laughter and wonder now carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, his eyes dark with questions he wasn't yet ready to ask. I had always known that being a mother to someone like him would require more than just love. It would require patience, sacrifice, and, most of all, understanding. "Mother," Valiant said, his voice calm but filled with something I hadn't heard before, regret. "I don't know who I am anymore." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I had feared this moment would come, where the line between my son and the bloodthirsty prince he was fated to become would blur. "You are Valiant," I said softly, taking his hand in mine. "You are the son I love, and that will never change. You are not your destiny. Not yet." He turned his gaze to the horizon, where the sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow over the kingdom. "The people fear me, don't they? They whisper about the things I'll do, things that I can't control. How can I stop becoming what they think I am?" I squeezed his hand tighter, wishing with all my heart that I could take away the burden he carried. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Valiant. The only thing you must prove is that you are strong enough to choose your own path. And that strength, my son, comes from your heart." He looked at me then, his eyes softening, as though something in him was shifting. "But what if the power inside me is too much? What if it consumes me?" I shook my head, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "You have more than power, Valiant. You have love. You have compassion. These things will guide you, no matter how dark the world around you may become. I believe in you, my son." The wind stirred the leaves around us, carrying with it a sense of change. Valiant's gaze was distant for a moment, as though he were contemplating everything I had said. But then, just as quickly, he looked at me again, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I want to be better, Mother. I want to be the person you've always believed I could be." And that, I realized, was all that mattered. The years passed, and with them, so too did the fear that had once consumed the palace. Valiant grew stronger, but not in the way the world expected. The people no longer whispered about his cruelty, but about his wisdom, his kindness, and his dedication to justice, becoming the leader I knew he could be. There were still those who sought to manipulate him, who tried to force him into the mold they had crafted for him. But every time they did, Valiant stood tall and defied them, choosing mercy over vengeance, understanding over control. One day, as I watched him stand before the council, addressing the kingdom's needs with a clarity I had never seen in him before, I felt a deep sense of peace settle in my heart. He was no longer the boy destined to become a tyrant. He was a man of honor, a ruler who would bring peace to the land, not through fear, but through compassion. As Valiant finished speaking, he turned to me with a small, knowing smile. It was a smile I hadn't seen in years, one filled with warmth and the light of a future he had chosen for himself. "Mother," he said quietly, his voice full of gratitude, "thank you for never giving up on me. You showed me that I can be more than what I was born into." And for the first time, I realized that the battle had never been against the world, nor even against the dark forces trying to control him. The true battle had been for Valiant's soul, a battle I had fought with love, and one that he had won. Valiant would be the hero of his own story.